It is 62 days to the 2023 general election. Good afternoon and welcome to Standpoint. I am Precious Amayu. Now, the two most trending stories that have made headline this week is the central bank withdrawal policy, and that's the withdrawal limit policy, whether it will affect the outcome of the 2023 general election. And then the Director General of the Peter Obi Campaign Council, who later resigned after he was convicted by Justice Ijoma Ojukwu of the Federal High Court in Abuja for about over 200 million naira laundering in the Dasuki Gate saga. Now, joining me in the studio to look at this is the Director of Special Programs, Nigerian Institute of Journalism, Dr. Jide Johnson. Good to have you join us.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
I hope we got that right.
Yeah, you got it right. It's a pleasure to be with you. And
Thank you.
Good day to our viewers all over the world.
So perhaps two of the biggest stories this week, the issue of the withdrawal policy, and you saw the saga that created between the CBN governor and the National Assembly, who kept inviting him to come and address that issue. And then his deputy, one of the deputies, went on his behalf. And there were issues around not being able to state the exact amount that was printed, the new Naira design. But I just want to get your thoughts on the timing, because I think that's the issue for a lot of people who say, look, this might have gross effect on the 2023 election.
It's even beyond the 2023 election. First, let's talk about the global economic crisis that we have. And then we zero it down to Nigeria, which we have double-digit inflation. And then the price of goods and services are skyrocketing. So is even much more important because it affects the generality of the people. The elections will come, the elections will go. So it's about the CBN coming out with policy to solve the basic problem, the basic monetary problem of the nation, and the lack of coordination and synergy between the CBN and the Ministry of Finance.
I remember she said she wasn't informed about the Naira design.
And the lack of that synergy also between the executive and the legislature. We should not forget the fact that both the executive and the legislature are elected representative of the people, spearheaded by the president and the executive, who appoints other officials to run ministries and departments and areas of government, and the legislature on the other hand, who are the true representative of the people that are elected on constituent basis and on district basis for the senator. So there's no synergy, there's no understanding between these various arms of government. That's why you see that the legislature keep inviting the central bank governor. He was postponing his appearance until his deputy appear on his behalf. So the CBN in terms of monetary policy, the Ministry of Finance in terms of fiscal policy, and the National Assembly in terms of oversight function and the functioning of government across board seems not to be on the same page with respect to this particular policy. And if agencies of government, if institutions of the states that are meant to coordinate, to serve as checks and balances and coordinate activities that will make life better for an average Nigerian, if they are working at cross purposes, then you tend to have this particular problem we're having. Because it seems from all indication that this particular policy is not well thought out. If it's well thought out, all the critical stakeholders that should be involved before the CBN rule out this policy, bring it to the public domain, we're not involved in this scheme.
I think I remember at some point, I can't remember whether it was the CBN governor who said that they were going to do this, I think twice before now, but it didn't work out, and so now they're ready to roll out. But when you say that it doesn't look like there is synergy between every stakeholders, everyone who should be involved in this, on whose desk does it lie to carry the National Assembly along? Because if you remember when the Minister of Finance was saying that she wasn't carried along with the issue of the Naira redesign, the president said he was informed and he was okay with that policy. So whose desk does it lie to carry the National Assembly along? Well,
one, the central bank governor has been appointed by the president. He has a responsibility to also involve other critical stakeholders. The president, there's a particular saying we say that you can give a ram to a person. Once you give the ram to the person, you leave the road for him. You can help a man to get a job. You don't help him to do his job. As the CBN governor, he knew what he needs to do with respect to getting critical stakeholders. All issues cannot be taken or be handled by the president, making an excuse for the president in this instance. And don't forget that the CBN governor himself was enmeshed in political, whether denial or not denial, he was immersed in having an aspiration to run for the president of the Federal Republic. So probably that distracted him a lot from his core function, from his core responsibility of getting adequate. Look, even if you get the approval, what's sending a memo to the Minister of Finance that, okay, we have secured the approval of the president towards the implementation of all of this particular policy, and then not for the Minister of Finance to be hearing that on TV, or for a journalist to trust it across the Minister of Finance to ask her the question, are you aware? And he's not aware. And then for the National Assembly to be asking questions with respect to. You could see now, even on that withdrawal limit, buying to pressure. Were all of these factors taken into consideration? What effect would he have on small and medium scale enterprise? What effect will have? What's the value? Even if you look at the value of Naira, what can 50,000 Naira buy as of today? What can 50,000 Naira buy? What can 2,000 Naira buy? So if you are looking at, you have to look at this policy holistically, looking at its direct effect on the macro economy and on the micro economy. All of these effects you have to take into consideration before you roll out the policy. Other than for us to be having policy flip-flop, you go forward 10 steps, you come backward 5 steps every now and then. And it seems, this is where I'll blame the president on this one. It seems that every agencies are not working as coordinates. They are working independently, as if they are highland on their own. Whereas the CBN, the Ministry of Finance, and even the NNPC and other revenue-generating agencies of government must be working in tandem with one another, so that we have a coherent, unified structure in running the economy, in running various policies that affect the lives of an average Nigerian.
Now, for those who are supporting this policy, they say it further enhances the cashless policy that we're trying to push across the country, and that it also would nip in the bud, perhaps, the issue of vote buying in the 2023 election.
You see, that's the focus. The focus is what central bank should concern itself is that we want to do the cashless policies, no doubt about that, which is good. We shouldn't be moving. But, the people that break the law are actually the people that made the law. That's one. Two, if you want to do that, do you have the infrastructure, the technical infrastructure, the technological infrastructure to do cashless policy? All you need to do is to go on social media pages and you see people complaining about them making a deposit. I can tell you, I went to the bank 2 days ago, and then I went into the bank to transfer money from one account, from one bank to another. It has not dropped till date. It has not dropped. Central bank is not addressing challenges that depositors have with their lodgements in the various banks. They are not dealing with basic my right issues that Nigerians are dealing with when it comes to them moving their money electronically. And then if you look at it, how many policies is Central Bank coming up with this year? This year they came up with the e-Naira. Where is the e-Naira? I'm asking you. Where is the e-Naira? So if it's about the election, that this policy is targeted at reducing vote buying, I can assure you, we can only limit the level to which you can discourage vote buying. There's nothing anybody can do to stop vote buying. But if you can't move cash around as much, because the limit is, I think it is about 500,000. It used to be 50,000 to 500,000. Yes, but there is also a caveat to that, which is the fact that if you move more, you pay about 5% for the processing fees. It's not like you cannot have more. It's just now there is now a percentage that you have to pay. For people who really have the money, do you think that percentage is such a big deal for them to pay to withdraw more than the 500? Now, the same bottled water you buy on the road for 100 naira in traffic is sold in some places for 5,000 naira. And people buy it. People buy it. So this policy, that's the argument. Even from IMF, another international agency, that this policy will affect the small, medium scale enterprise. For the big guys, what's 5% to them? they can afford to pay the 5%. But can someone that is running his own small business that has a rate of turnover of, let's say, 500,000 naira at the end of the year, can he afford to pay 5,000 additional, 50,000 additional 5% on that 500,000? These are what we are not talking about the effect on the macroeconomy. We are talking on the microeconomy. People with small and then don't forget that the informal sector is the major driver of the Nigerian economy. There are a lot of money that are not in the banks.
Exactly.
There are a lot of money there are a lot of money that are not in the bank. And then you don't look if you want to do that policy, you don't do it within a short period of time. So you bring a policy in December, and then in January, effect in January, you are coming up with that policy, and then you are also changing the format and the structure of your naira note. So we are having multiple policies at the same time. So the implementation period, policies can be good policies. However, the execution, the implementation, what effect does it have? And you see that no one has questioned the central bank with respect to that policy. What we have questioned is the timing and the structure. Why should you limit me as an individual to 500,000 weekly? Can 500,000 pay rent in Lagos?
But even if so, that's one issue. But I think it was Governor Amadu Fintiri of Adamawa State who said that this is targeted at the political class. Do you think that it is politically motivated, this particular policy? Does it have any political coloration to you?
Well, whatever you do has political coloration, because politics that shapes everything. Whether we are, for example, the federal government declared that Monday and Tuesday next week is public holiday. If the federal government goes ahead to say Wednesday is public holiday, who will question that? So politics shapes everything. So everything, the economy takes direction from the politics. Technology takes direction from politics. Society takes direction from politics. The legal instrument takes direction from politics. Let's talk. So the environmental factors take direction from politics. So when you do, in anything you want to do, in any business, in any sector, there's what is called the PESU analysis. In PESU analysis, which is an acronym for politics, economy, social, technological, legal, and environmental factor. Politics come first. Politics come first. It shapes the direction of whatever. So people will always read political dimension to it. So if the governor is saying that, it has political dimension, do governors, we have cashless policies, do state governments comply with cashless policies that we have in place now? Do they? All you need to do is for you to just go to the banks, and then, for example, if I have a deposit of 1 billion in a bank, and I call the bank manager that I needed 200 million, and I needed it in cash, and he says, "Sir, we cannot get it." The rich always find a way. The high and mighty always find a way around it. If I tell the bank manager that I'm moving my money from that bank to another bank, what do you think he will do? I'm talking about practical sense. So sometimes you must also look at the practicality of the policies you are bringing into focus. How practicable and how achievable are these policies that we are bringing into the society? Because some of these policies, we have had policies with respect to making sure that we operate in a cashless society, but it is the same government, ministries and departments and agencies of government that are using heavy cash.
But let me ask you, because we know that one of the things we've always talked about is how, I think it was one of the candidates of the aspirants on the PDP platform who said that the primaries were, the primary was obscenely monetized. I think that was one of the language he used. And we've always talked about how monetized our politics and elections are in the country. There's always a limit set by INEC for campaigns, and yet, politicians find a way to beat it. So wouldn't this also help in ensuring that we don't pass that threshold of the limit set by INEC?
Democracy is an expensive project anywhere in the world. You just look at the resources that are expended by people aspiring into a runoff was just done in Georgia, and then you know how much Senator Warnock raised to prosecute that election. And then in 1991, presidential candidates in Nigeria were banned from contesting election. You know the reason that was? He said the process was monetized. There's no way you can take monetary inducement out of politics. That's the reality. That's the flaw of representative democracy. Even in advanced democracy like that of United States of America, you know the amount of war chest you have is one of the critical factors to determine your electability. To whether you win the election or you not win the election. So you run your campaigns using money. You run your offices, your volunteers and the rest of them. So as far as I'm concerned, it's plain to the gallery saying that even the central bank governor himself, we have it on record, where we see buses, cars, campaign vehicles for him. So did they use corn to buy those things? So there's no way you can take the influence of money in representative democracy. It's not possible.
All right, so I want to stay on money, but we're moving away from the central bank cash policy. I mean, one of the big stories again this week was the issue of the money laundering conviction against the Director General of the Peter Obi, now former Director General of the Peter Obi campaign council, who was convicted by Justice Ijoma Ojukwu for, I think it was about to the tune of about over 200 million naira. That issue started from the Jonathan era, but prosecuted by this present administration. What's your thought on that?
Well, fairly the man resigned. He told the honorable part, in Nigerian people don't resign. And it's a lesson for you and I to learn, to understand that whatever actions we take today might have a dire consequence in the future by not dipping our hands into the cookie jar. He dipped his hand into the cookie jar, and then that created a problem for him because he was convicted and then he had to pay the fine. Now he's an ex-convict, whether he likes it or not, except there's a presidential pardon.
But he's gone on to appeal it, so we'll see how that plays out.
That will play out. But my take on that particular issue is that how was it possible, and what measures have we put in place to foster such occurrence again in Nigeria, that people will use funds that are meant to prosecute the fight against insecurity, and then they begin to share this money amongst themselves. And I've asked this question: the accountant, the auditor in those various offices, what happens to them? The civil servants that were involved. Because it is not easy for you to take money from the public purse and then begin to distribute it until we hold some certain people. Who was the accountant general of the Federation at that particular point in time? Who was the auditor general of the Federation?
So from this particular case of Doyin Okupe, it does seem like his particular money wasn't banked. I think that was what the major issue was. That money did not go through any financial institution, and that's what he's been convicted for. So that's another issue.
If you are conversant with the way these things are done at this level, there are a lot of, in actual sense, it is even government agencies and whatever that deals with a lot of unbanked money, monies that do not go through the normal financial institution records and the rest. And the rest is there in the public domain, except we want to play to the gallery. Okay, now the question is, how was that money withdrawn from the system? Who signed for that money? Who raised the memo? What you see, we are still battling with the case of the Accountant General of the Federation. And then you ask yourself, the present one, in this present administration, the Accountant General of the Federation is in court. You ask yourself the question, how was it possible for him to move that amount of money out of this? What are the checks and balances? What about due process? Obi It was named Madam Due Process because during her tenure, it was that time the Obasanjo administration, they talked about the process through which you could raise vouchers or you could raise memos and then get it done. What happens to due process? That people blatantly abuse processes, abuse privileges, and then money that belongs to the public domain are being used for private.
You know, just like I said earlier, because one of the things we saw, whether social media or general conversation, people say, oh, why now? Because this case actually started in 2019. And people are wondering, look, it's just few months or few weeks to the general election, and he's a DG of the party in the opposition.
Was he involved in it? Is he a false accusation? I'm asking you. Did they come to you or did they come to me? Now, why now? The arms of the law might be long, it will surely get to you at that particular point in time. So if the case started in 2019 and then we are getting judgment now, people read political. I've said it earlier. People read political.
Even there were insinuations. Even the presidential candidate of the Labour Party also saying that look, he's being targeted at him, and that this probably is politically motivated. Do you think that is?
I've forgotten the publicity secretary of PDP. Doyin Okupe was in PDP before going to Labour. And the presidential candidate of the Labour Party too was in PDP before going to Labour. So, but he was not part of the Dasuki arrangement. The Dasuki arrangement. All of them that were involved in the Dasuki arrangement, all of them. We had cases of people refunding money back on this particular issue. But the question I keep asking is, the NSC under Jonathan had so much power to use state resources for personal gain to dispense it as political patronage. What measures have we put in place now to prevent the present NSC from abusing his office, just like the former NSC under Jonathan abused his office? You see, we only treat the sensational issues. We sensationalize the case. Now, in this particular context, if Doyin Okupe was not the DG of Peter Obi, the story will pass by. But because he's the DG of Peter Obi's campaign and one of the leading presidential candidate in the conversation towards 2020, so it will make news. I can't recall the former publicity secretary of PDP. I can't recall his name. He too was involved in this Olisametu.
Olisametu, yes.
Yeah, he too is involved in. For example, if peradventure someone else was convicted and it does not, do you think it will carry the same weight it's carrying with what Doyin Okupe has done with respect to that particular issue? People read political meaning to it. Was he involved in that fleece? He dipped his hand in the fleece and is being caught by that singular effect. And it's also a lesson for whoever is aspiring for a political office to do background check. I'm sure moving forward, anyone that is aspiring for the office will do background check of who is associating with you with respect to running your campaign and the rest of it. I think that if they have done their own background check and he knew that, oh, there's a particular issue, there's a particular ongoing case with respect to this, I'm sure.
Well,
and then this particular character, you know, before this particular case, there's a case in the Labour Party in Ogun State, from his state of origin. There is this brickbat with respect to campaign fund or no campaign fund, money for campaign with the Ogun State chapter of the party.
And they
said
were
he suspended
eventually
him
suspended,
yes.
But
money.
Perhaps he was looking at the pedigree of the person and his experience and perhaps been able to lead a campaign. But do you think that his resignation, I know he's not appealing that particular judgment, but do you think that his resignation would have any impact on the Peter Obi campaign and circle?
Not at all. I think it tread the path of honor. Nigerian people don't resign. I think that I salute his courage and his commitment and his discipline to say that, you know what, I'm a distraction to your campaign. I need to step aside for someone else to do. In Nigeria, people don't do that, and I salute his courage for that. I think that if you look all around, all the people that are aspiring for offices in Nigeria, There's none that has not gone through one crisis or the other. So it's just a minor setback. I think they will rebound from it. His timely resignation was a damage limitation that made...
Or else, you know, it probably would have continued to trail the Peter Obi campaign. Thank you so much for talking to us. You know, it's always a pleasure to have your thoughts on this issue, Dr. Jide Johnson.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me. Merry Christmas.
Wish you the same compliments of the season.
To our viewers in advance.
Thank you.